Welcome back to Rise to Liberty podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Just making sure that all of the streams are up and rolling. It looks good. Checking in over on the people at Podbean right now. Okay, it looks like we are good to go. So, let me know out there in the comment section if there are any issues regarding sound or anything else. I will do my best to make sure and get that taken care of. So today's coverage, I got a stupid hair hitting my nose. Okay, anyways, today's coverage is going to be on Jonestown. Let's see. So there were a lot of references in part 1 and even part 2. Let's see here. Just pulling up those references real quick. Should have had that done. I always end up saying that, but it's never going to happen. So I do have the main thread pulled up, but I did just want to run into these mentions of Jonestown in part 1 and part 2. Just as a refresher for anyone who was already here or anyone who wasn't here for part 1 and part 2, I have gone ahead and linked the thread in the episode description, so if you want to follow along, make sure and do that. Let's see right here. Okay. So, first things first, we are going to run through just a couple of the mentions of Jonestown in part 1 and part 2. So you had a couple of pop-ups in my background. Of course, everything's got to wait to update right after I start the stream. Of course, ain't it always the way? Okay, so let's go right here actually. Okay. So, from part 1, let's see, sorry, just have a bunch of things popping up. Okay, now we're good. So from part 1, where we kind of gave a full overview of who is involved in the False Memory Syndrome Foundation, where they come from, why they are important, these sorts of things. Let's see here. Okay, check. Sorry, just had to fix some of my levels real quick. Okay, because this is a professional show, so that's why we've got to do these things right now. Anyways, so in the first part, there were a couple of mentions of Jonestown, so we're going to go through those right now. So in 1980, Joseph Halsinger, aide to Congressman Leo Ryan, who was murdered by a Jonestown death squad, exposed the formation of eccentric religious cults by the CIA. Halsinger made allegations at colloquium. I don't know. I can never pronounce that word. Of psychologists. Basically, just a big convention on psychosocial implications of the Jonestown phenomenon. Halsinger maintained a CIA support base, was colluding with Jim Jones to perform medical and mind control experiments at the People's Temple in Guyana. The former congressional aide cited an essay sent to him in the mail called The Penal Colony. No snickering about the name. The author of The Penal Colony a Berkeley psychologist, had emphasized rather than terminating MKUltra, the CIA shifted its programs from public institutions to private cult groups, including the People's Temple. Which brings us to today's episode, which is the whole point of today's episode. Granted, it is a bit of a detour away from false memory. It does actually have something to do with it. So, how it is related is to show that not only did MKUltra not disband or not stop their operations, like the CIA said in the Church Committee hearings in '73, but they actually did continue. However, it was not MKUltra that continued. MKUltra was like the R&D, the research and development of these mind control techniques. However, they took what they learned in MKUltra and put it into practice. The idea is that Jonestown was the very first implication of basically the research that they had done under MKUltra, putting it into a real world context, and this is what happened. So Dr. Lawrence Laird Layton, a chemist for the Manhattan Project and head of the U.S. Army's Chemical Warfare Research Division in the early 1950s, had a son, Larry Layton. Larry led a death squad to the airstrip in Guyana, where Congressman Leo Ryan, among many others, were murdered. Michael Myers, researcher and author, spent 6 years digging through all of the information he could, which resulted in his book, Was Jonestown a CIA Medical Experiment? Myers concluded after his investigation, and this is what he said, quote, "The Jonestown experiment was conceived by Dr. Layton, staffed by Dr. Layton, and financed by Dr. Layton. It was as much his project as it was Jim Jones." And then we get into the SLA, which is a conversation for another day. However, that is the connection from the first thread. Let's see here. Just running through, making sure that there isn't anything in the second thread that we need to touch on, just to give this background information. And it looks like we're pretty much good on the second thread, so we will get straight into today's thread, which I am very excited for. Put a lot of work into this. Of course, this is not my own original research. I wish I could take credit for this. I did do a lot of searching to be able to find all of this information because it wasn't gathered all in one place. I wish it was. All I did was put it together in a digestible format. Let's see here. Come on. There we go. Okay, so let's see here. So Jonestown was far from a religious cult fanaticism resulting in mass murder. Deeper investigation revealed a clear continuation of MKUltra, Operation Gladio, Operation Condor, and Operation Phoenix, which includes paramilitary action, drug and gun running, state terrorism, and mind control.
Dude, I gotta...
So, this is a clip from Sam Tripoli's tinfoil hat. My buddies Austin and
to tell you something I found out yesterday, Austin, and this ties in perfectly into this. I found out yesterday that this ties into the whole Colts MKUltra connection here that I was kind of making. Jonestown, apparently the land upon which it was at in Guyana, the 2 years prior, literally right before they took over the land, like it was owned by the government, and it was being trained for it was used for Operation Shalom, where they took black Green Beret soldiers and trained them in what I don't know particularly. One of those individuals that was trained there within the 2 years prior to the Jonestown, debacle in Guyana on that very same land was Colton Westbrook, the spook that ended up being the person who was running at the Symbionese Liberation Army, that was known for Patty Hearst and all that. That he was being trained right before then, and then in MKUltra op, Jonestown goes off right then. I just was talking about false memory syndrome yesterday, and that is like, holy shit, no fucking way. Austin's gonna cream his pants.
Hold on.
Yeah, we threw a lot at you.
Guys, pump the brakes. Hold on.
These guys on Sam Tripoli's tinfoil hat bringing this up. Jose and I had a conversation. We were doing false memory stuff on his channel. Make sure and go check that out over at No Way Jose, YouTube, Rumble, all the good places. And we were discussing this. By the way, there is no, at least in this thread, there is no connection for the Colton Westbrook. However, I do have that on the back end. That is being used for something else, so it's not in this thread. However, let's get directly into this. So, the question we should be asking is, was Jonestown connected to the CIA? Was Jonestown a CIA medical experiment? Who was Jim Jones? Was he connected to the CIA? We went over this a little bit in part 2 of the false memory stuff, regarding all the different connections with Jim Jones being tied to the CIA, and how the book Raven completely and utterly ignored any connection to the CIA, which is incredibly odd considering who wrote the book, considering the fact that Raven was the CIA code name for Jim Jones. There was just all sorts of blatant, obvious connections. Go ahead and go check out part 2 of False Memory. You can check that out. YouTube, Rumble, all the good places. Let's see here real quick. So these are the questions we definitely do need to be asking. Oh, that's not how you spell come hang out. There we go. Anyways, so the first thing that we come across, or the first thing we really should be asking is, who was Jim Jones? What was his connection? There is a lot more that we can get into, but one important point that I thought was worthy to point out was Jim Jones and what he was doing in the early 60s. So in early 1962, Jim Jones was actually in Brazil, where he remained until mid-1964. What he was doing there is he was helping with preparations for the 1964 CIA-backed coup of the Brazilian president Goulart, I believe. I am not Brazilian. Don't knock me for my pronunciation. However, this CIA-backed coup d'etat was known, well known, actually. It's not a conspiracy. It is just on regular, everyday Wikipedia. It was known as Operation Brother Sam. So, Operation Brother Sam was the use of the United States Navy and Air Force in support of the coup d'etat in 1964, with its deterioration in relations with Golart, however you pronounce his last name, his government, and the favorable attitude of the groups conspiring against him, the idea of an operation to ensure the success of an uprising arose. So you can go ahead and go check that out. It is linked in the thread if you would like. So Jones was exposed in print in a newspaper at the time as a CIA operative by a local newspaper, which accused him of filtering money to military officers to finance the 1964 coup. The reporter in this newspaper wrote, quote, "We all know this flamboyant American is CIA," end quote. Jones refuted the charges by telling the reporter that his money came from his pension as a retired U.S. military officer, although Jones had never served in the military. So that's rather quite interesting. Let's see here real quick. Want to make sure that everything is, the layout's good for this. So one thing I did find, which was actually rather difficult to find, was Jim Jones's identification card from when he was, I guess, stationed, since he is a CIA asset, or was. I found a picture of his identification card when he lived in Brazil. So make sure and go check that out in the thread. It is there. So it did show him as local in 1962. What's really interesting, it also shows him as American. So what was he doing there? Why would he be there? One thing I think is interesting to point out about Jim Jones, before going to Guyana, before even his exploits in California and San Francisco, I mean, he was your average civil rights leader of the time. And I guess average isn't the right word. There just seemed to be more of them back then, is why I thought average might be a good word. But he was definitely far from average. However, what's interesting is if he would have actually been assassinated, much like MLK, much like Malcolm X, or any of these other guys, if he would have been assassinated beforehand, before the Guyana trip, he would have been remembered entirely differently. He would have been remembered as one of these people who led the civil rights movement. Him and his wife actually had adopted what they ended up calling their rainbow family. They had adopted many children of different races, which, mind you, this is the United States in the 60s. This is unheard of. This does not happen. So in many aspects, he was very progressive. The black community really clung to him in many aspects because of this. He would usually take a lot of his followers and go into restaurants and force them to, serve the black community. Now, I don't necessarily agree with forcing business owners to do anything. If a business owner wants to be bigoted, let them. All you have to do is just not eat there. However, this was during Jim Crow, which I definitely don't agree with that type of legislation either. So them fighting back against this, I actually think it's pretty cool, even for like now time period. Pretty noble. However, the point is that Jim Jones was actually pretty well known for being a civil rights leader, which is mind-blowing to me. But it's because we know how it all ended. So what was he doing down in Brazil? I just find it really interesting. One thing I was unable to put in this, I probably should have found a way to do it though, is that while he was in Brazil in 1964, there was a man who ran a laundromat where Jones was located. Well, Jones said that he had actually worked in the laundromat, and the owner of the laundromat turned around and said that's a lie. He only lied that he worked here to cover his operations as a CIA asset. It was actually in that newspaper that we had discussed before. So, Brazil wasn't alone. The CIA was also laying the coup groundwork in Guyana as well. Anyone who knows CIA history, we as in the CIA was all over South America, Central America. There's tons of CIA operations going on at the time. So, just like Brazil, CIA was down in Guyana laying the groundwork for another coup. A National Security Archive article reveals that $250,000 was the price that the CIA paid for the eventual coup that happened in Guyana, ensuring the rise of President Burnham, which was a president who was very pro-CIA, pro-US, because this is what the CIA largely does, right? This is them nation building, coming in, offering the president or the regime at the time a opportunity to go along with what the CIA is doing. Well, if they choose to not, then they usually try to threaten them, and then if that doesn't work, then the CIA will come in, dethrone you, and install their own puppet. So that's basically what happened here. This is exactly what happened with Burnham. And Jones was actually down there ahead of time, but we'll get to that in just a sec. So in 1961, elections were marked by further colonial office gerrymandering and fierce campaigning that was aided by U.S. dollars channeled through the CIA-linked Christian anti-communist crusade. But again, the PPP won the elections. So, this is kind of interesting. It's the CIA-linked Christian anti-communist crusade. So, for anyone who knows anything about Jim Jones, or any of the official story, the history of the People's Temple, they were socialist. They promoted socialism, especially once Jim Jones made it out to California. As soon as he was out there, he was really pushing the socialism, eat the rich kind of rhetoric. So by the time this comes around in 1961, they are very openly communist. They also claim to be Christians. So they were, along with many other organizations that we could get into at a later date, they were really part of this CIA-linked Christian anti-communist crusade. After the third victory of the PPP, the United States and British operatives stepped up their destabilization activity. A campaign of racial violence and trade union manipulation was waged by the CIA, masquerading under the cover as the American Institute for Free Labor Development, AIFLDs. Kind of sounds like USAID before USAID, which all of the research that I've done into the AIFLD, that's pretty much what it was. So AIFLD, penetration of the Guyana trade union movement resulted in prolonged strikes and racial violence from 1962 to 1964, the time in which Jones was in Brazil, just a hop, skip, and a jump away from Guyana. This gave the British an excuse to stall independence and rig the voting system by establishing a proportional voting scheme and a proxy voting. Although the PPP captured 46% of the total votes, they only won 8.6% of the 6,665 proxy votes. The proportional voting scheme allowed a coalition between Burnham's newly formed PNC party and the ultra-right United Force Party to oust Jagan from office, the former president. As reported in April 10th, 1967, London Sunday Times, Jagan ouster was relatively inexpensive for the CIA and accomplished with around $250,000. The price for Guyana was 170 dead and hundreds wounded, 10 million pounds worth of damage to the economy, and the legacy of racial bitterness. So that direct quote came from the London Sunday Times. I was unable to find the exact newspaper. So if anyone can ever find that, let me know. Let's see. So here is a picture beforehand of Jones with the newly installed president, the newly installed CIA-backed president in Guyana. Jones went down prior to their trip, I believe it was 77 or 78, when they finally went down there permanently and never came back. But as far as I know, this picture was taken beforehand, before Jones had started the final trip down there. At this time, Jonestown was actually already being built and being used, but we will get into that. Supposedly, Jones went down there to be able to go make like peace runs and build relations with the government of Guyana. But it's just really strange that Jones, a supposed spook, would come in with another spook president and just have these meetings to establish relations. Just really strange. And once again, how many coincidences do we have to ignore? On October 21st, 1961, the Guyana Graphic published a photo of Jones and his family over the headline, "Church blamed in..." Somebody trying to call me. So, church blamed in Red's rise. Basically, a rise in, the communist factions in these parts of the country, or parts of the world, I mean. Let's see. Give me just 1 second. Just making sure that I don't get another phone call to interrupt. Okay, we should be good. So, in the article that followed, Jones was quoted giving anti-communist speeches in which he blamed the affluent Guyanese clergy for bleeding the wealth from the people, which made communism appear attractive to them. The article served to help attract the anti-communist faction to a new hero, Jim Jones, whose assignment was to organize and aid their cause. Jones proceeded to recruit and train a group of black Guyanese rowdies, freedom fighters, who were to incite race riots and labor strikes intended to cripple Jagan's government. Michael Myers wrote, "With his rainbow family and doctrine of racial interrogation, Jones had the perfect disguise for his work as an instigator of race riots. His People's Temple provided the necessary missionary cover as well as an excellent conduit to filter money from the U.S. to Guyanese rebels, which is exactly what I was discussing beforehand. Just a little bit more of the puzzle. Another piece of this puzzle is CIA dissident Philip Agee wrote in his book, Inside the Company, a CIA diary, that Burnham's election as prime minister in December 1964, quote, was achieved largely due to CIA operations to strengthen the anti-Jagan trade unions, which fomented the riots and removed the fear that Jagan would turn British Guyana into another Cuba. So the CIA-backed coup in Guyana is very well documented. You can find documents of it in the CIA's reading room. I guess it is speculation that Jones not only is a asset, but is a man down there working at the time. However, we have placed him in the area without a doubt. He was in the area at the time. We have placed him with the CIA-backed, CIA-installed coup d'etat president. There are pictures of them together before the Jonestown mass suicide, which I don't believe it was a mass suicide, more of a mass murder. So yes, it is speculation that Jones is actually an asset. I don't think it's that big of a speculation. I don't think we have to jump that far to get there. So due to the new restrictions placed on the CIA, they needed a solution. Jonestown's location near Port Khatuma is strategically valuable as a U.S. intelligence foothold for covert operations. So at the time, largely done by Congressman Leo Ryan, there were... So mind you, at the time in the early 70s, this is the church committee hearings, okay? So it's all coming out about MKULTRA, Operation Mockingbird, things like Operation Northwoods, all of these things that the CIA has been doing in secret is coming out. So you have the church committee hearings exposing all of these things. So one of the solutions, like I said, largely proposed by Leo Ryan, was that the CIA must go to the president or to Congress for permission before they perform any sort of covert action or before they go out and cause mayhem, overthrow a nation, sell drugs, import drugs, sell guns, whatever it may be. They have to come to the president or to Congress for permission. Obviously, this puts a huge damper in the CIA's plan because they can't do what they need to do if they're constantly running to Congress to ask, daddy for an allowance or asking daddy for permission. They kind of take it's better to ask for forgiveness than it is permission approach here. So strategically, though, Jonestown, where it's located in Guyana, is most definitely strategically valuable because at the time, let's just pull the map up real quick. So for anyone who's just listening or anyone who doesn't know, Guyana actually borders Venezuela. And at the time in Venezuela, just go look up at the history in that region at the time. There are tons of things going on socially, politically, economically. Of course, the United States wants access to Venezuela because of their oil. And at the time, we are having crumbling relations, just rapidly crumbling at the time. So, Jonestown is, I mean, let's see. So based on this map, exactly how accurate it is, I'm not 100% sure. It did come from an official source, but it looks like it's, 20 or so miles from the Venezuelan border, the eastern, the eastern Venezuelan border is where Jonestown is. So 40, 50 miles, 20, 40, somewhere right there. Point is it's not that far. This is a very strategic location if you are trying to run covert operations with your Green Berets. Let's see here. So Venezuela is significant during the Cold War era due to oil reserves and shifting political alliances. I mentioned in part 2 of my False Memory Syndrome Foundation thread, but before Jonestown was established, the project was called the Shalom Project, or the Shalom Cooperative. Another reason why it was strategic, so Guyana was important strategically to the U.S. because of its economic resources, especially Buxty, I believe. Buxty, and became, the U.S. had an Air Force base acquired from the British, Atkinson Field, where the Air Force officers carried out photo mapping of the entire region, which is incredibly important at this time period. So we've got emerging communist countries coming up. Of course, we want to spy on all of these people, see exactly what they're doing, what they have going on. So we need an Air Force base to be able to do that from. So we did get this Air Force base from the British, not sure exactly how, Atkinson Field, where Air Force officers carried out mapping of the entire region. So there's another reason. You've got that paired with what I've already said about Venezuela. So, as stated before, in the video showed at the very beginning of this, also from part 2 of my false memory thread, the property in which Jonestown was sat on was part of the Shalom Project. We'll get into this real quick, but I've got another video clip to show you guys real quick. So, let's see.
The methods that Jim Jones used in his cult, the People's Temple, are definitely classical mind control techniques. And according to a book by Michael Myers, which is called Was Jonestown a CIA Medical Experiment, his documentation leads him to conclude that actually Jonestown was run by the CIA. Prior to being Jonestown in the deep jungles of British Guiana, that site was actually under control of what was called the Shalom Project. This was a CIA program for training black mercenaries for warfare in Angola. The methods that Jim Jones used in his...
So that's basically what we were talking about. For anyone who doesn't know, that is Dr. Colin A. Ross. He is a very well-known psychologist who has written extensively about MKUltra, all of the doctors and their abuse. Give me just 1 sec. I'm grabbing something. Grabbing a book, and of course it's got to be on the bottom of the stack. But Dr. Colin A. Ross wrote this book right here, The CIA doctors, highly recommended. So he's not just a nobody. He knows his things. He poured over 15,000 documents to be able to write his book, and he gives lectures on MKUltra and all sorts of other medical abuses. He gives these lectures all across the country, or at least has before. Excuse me. So from Michael Myers himself in his book, I believe this is page 81, his book reads, from 1973 to 1975, Blakely, who will come back to who this is, from 1973 to 1975, Blakely was in charge of the encampment that was known as the Shalom Project. The same encampment that between 1975 and 1978 was known as Jonestown. The Shalom Project was neither Jewish nor peaceful. The CIA supplied the project with 200 black ex-Green Beret Special Forces experts. The Green Berets were the elite of the Vietnam conflict, well trained in all aspects of guerrilla warfare. You got to think at the time Jonestown was happening. The war was already over. Let's see here. Stupid mouse not working. Let's see. Kim. Yeah, and he got crickets when he explained about DID, etc. Are you talking about Colin Ross? So this at the time the Shalom Project is going on was at the end of the Vietnam War. There were a lot of special forces, like I've talked about in previous episodes. Vietnam was like the war where special forces, Green Berets, Navy SEALs, all of these elite fighting forces were really established for what they were going to be in the future. And there were such things as Operation Gladio, which really started in World War II, but really picked up again in Vietnam. And then you have Project Phoenix. You have all of these special programs. Project Phoenix, supposedly, which is where the serial killer author Shawcross came out of, along with many, many others. Project Phoenix, it was a paramilitary operation that really just kind of, okay, so for lack of a better term, created terrorist or serial killers is basically what it looks like when you read into it. So you have all of these highly trained killers, all of these people that have done terrible, terrible things, and now the war is over. What do they do? They can't just go back into society. They can't just go get married, have a bunch of kids, and then forget that they did all of these things. So a lot of them were having really difficult times getting acclimated back to civilian life. So what was done with a lot of these highly trained people, because I mean there wasn't that many of them in comparison to a lot of these the average soldier. So what happened was the CIA would approach a lot of these people and offer them to basically stay doing what they were doing and to become mercenaries. That's what a lot of these people did. Hence the Shalom Project. That's where this comes in. So if you're going to be training a lot of Guyanese soldiers down there in the jungles, you're going to need some really talented people, talented as far as this stuff goes, paramilitary operations, leave behind military operations, that sort of thing. To be able to train these Guyanese soldiers, you're going to need some very talented people. Well, you just got through a war, training all these people on U.S. taxpayer money. Might as well put them back to work at the Shalom Project, train all of these people, because we might need some rebels to go into Venezuela, depending on how the socio-political issues end up happening over there. As far as I know, we didn't actually end up sending any troops over there, but there's so many things that are classified, who knows. Also, there was a separate coup going on in Africa, well, in one spot in Africa, many coups. Angola is where we were sending people from South America. So it seems like the Shalom Project was really training people to stay along the border of Venezuela, or go into Venezuela, I'm sure, and then also training mercenaries to go over to Angola. So this page goes on to say, since the 1960s, their number had been reduced by over 10,000, and many found readjusting to civilian life doubly difficult. They returned from Vietnam to find the same discriminatory practices in hiring as had forced them to join the military in the first place. Only now they were further shunned by potential employers for their part in a war for which most Americans felt ashamed. To these unemployable veterans, the CIA offered a profitable solution. They could be highly paid mercenaries or advisors who trained other mercenaries. These experts in weapons, demolitions, communications, medicine, and intelligence were placed in the overseas security staff of major U.S. corporations and in guerrilla warfare training camps, such as the one headed by Phil Blakely in Jonestown. So remember the name Phil Blakely, because we will be coming back to that person. Mind you, also from 73 to 75, Philip Blakely was in charge of the encampment. He was in charge of the Shalom Project. This was his baby, his thing. Kim, yes. Dr. Colin A. Ross was definitely mocked and treated like trash, basically, for his work on DID. He's definitely seen some interesting reactions from his community. Somebody had asked him one time whether he was nervous if the CIA would, reach out and touch him, make him go the way of Gary Webb and so many others. And Dr. Colin A. Ross said that he actually was not worried about the CIA at all, that he was far more worried about the psychiatrists, which, in a very dark way is pretty funny. So to keep this moving, in the mid-1970s, mercenaries were heading for Angola, a CIA-backed conflict under Henry Kissinger's directive. This 1974 declassified State Department document acknowledges the existence of Project Shalom, or the Shalom Cooperative. So the State Department document states the following. From CIA reports, the National Security Council, dominated by Henry Kissinger, had advanced knowledge of the military coup in Portugal, hence the three-sided civil war in its African colony of Angola. In the aftermath of the U.S. defeat in Vietnam, Henry Kissinger, even though he knew it was another no-win situation, ordered the CIA to aid the two independent factions that opposed the popular communist faction in Angola. The rebels needed advisors, mercenaries, and arms. They were fighting for their lives. Kissinger, within his view of global politics, was fighting to make a statement to the communists that they could not just take what they wanted uncontested. Oh, come on. Stupid mouse not working. So, in many aspects, the Shalom Project has been confirmed by these other documents. This is also a State Department document showing the existence of the Shalom Cooperative. This was a report from a recon mission by the Guyanese military, I believe. Foreigners in the area are... this is going over who is located in the area that they had surveyed where they did their recon mission. Foreigners in the area are the People's Temple, Agricultural Mission, and the Shalom Cooperative. Other activities in the area are construction of national service campsite and small-scale government and private farming. Go ahead and check out those documents. They are linked below. Let's see here. Just making sure I have everything in the back. Okay, so I'm also working from a news article of where I got a lot of this information. So just to make sure that we have all of our bases covered. And it looks like we're good so far. So to keep going. This 1974 telegram from the U.S. Embassy in Caracas, which housed a CIA office. It was the closest CIA office at the time. Let's see here. Just make sure, checking the chats and everything. Okay. This 1974 telegram from the U.S. Embassy in Caracas, which housed a CIA office, to the Secretary of State, acknowledges a couple of things. First, it acknowledges there are 2 agricultural missions staffed by Americans. That is the Shalom Project and Jonestown, or what would become as Jonestown. The second thing that it acknowledges is that there are paramilitary forces in the area. I have gone ahead and provided the link for that. The Guyanese Paramilitary Corps was likely the Guyanese National Service, a force created by the UN or by UN recommendation that not only trained soldiers, but also served as a front for covert CIA-backed activities. So the Guyana National Service, another CIA front. It's a spook front. This is nothing new. The CIA has been doing this in the jungles all across the world. So, once again, not that far of a leap. Also, the Guyana National Service being a force that was created by UN recommendation just makes this sketchy as all hell. So this 1974 telegram reads as follows. Subject: American citizens settled in disputed area of Guyana-Venezuelan border. Let's see. Reference Georgetown, which is a town in Guyana. 1236. Let's see right here. The important part. We would propose orally to inform Foreign Ministry of the 2 agricultural cooperative missions, which are staffed by American citizens. So, mind you, let's see, this is 1974, well before Jonestown. So we have Americans down there. However, we feel it would be better repair it for Raftel or Raftel, not to involve ourselves in passing information concerning a Guyanese paramilitary corps of 500 volunteers. And this should be a matter of Guyanese government's own responsibility if it wishes Venezuelans to be informed. So, like I said, it acknowledges 2 things. 2 agricultural missions staffed by Americans. There are paramilitary forces in the area of upward of 500 people. 500 paramilitary forces. Let's see. So this is after the massacre. So this is where I might want to switch over to... Let's see. Let me just go ahead and remove this real quick. Okay. Give me just 1 sec to switch over. Okay. So Congressman Leo Ryan, a Democrat out of California, which, Democrats back then were way different than they are now. So Leo J. Ryan, one of the CIA's foremost congressional critics who sponsored legislation attempting to rein it in, was lured by Jonestown to investigate it, then shot to death alongside 4 members of his entourage, Temple defector Patricia Parks, and reporters Greg Robinson, Don Harris, and Bob Brown, on an airstrip armed by armed men who looked like zombies. We'll get more into that. Ryan was the first and only U.S. congressman killed in the line of duty. He was killed with untraceable dum-dum bullets by a giant man wearing military fatigues who was not from Jonestown. Outlawed by the Geneva Convention, the dum-dum bullets, which shatter upon impact, would have been issued by the CIA for use in anti-Castro exile raids on Cuba and the JFK assassination. So this is one piece I was unable to include in the thread. But the dum-dum bullets, let me see if I can find something real quick to see. Dum-dum bullets. Exactly what they are, or at least what they look like. Okay, I think I found something. So let's see here. Oh, come on. Come on, StreamYard. Okay, here we go. So, The Truth About Dum-Dum Bullets by Dr. Hayden Frown. Interesting. So, among the various characteristics and incidents of the Great War, the use of dum-dum bullets once again enters as a distressing and important matter. Let's see, what is the date on this? It doesn't say. So, as a matter of public interest, but also to serve as a guide in inquiry, I am able to give illustrations of various forms of these bullets from the collection which I possess of specimens actually used in a former Great War. All have been taken from dead and wounded of the enemy. My position as a surgeon having afforded me the best of opportunities for making a study of the subject on the spot. Dum-dum is a term which may fairly be applied to all bullets which do not make a clean passage through whatever part of the body is struck, but expand or split up or mushroom out, much as a hollow point, as in the illustration marked in number 1, which is right here up in this corner, up in the top left corner. They mushroom out as such, which is a hollow point. So, making increased havoc in consequence and ending in exit that is vastly greater than entrance. The illustration marked 1A gives a good idea of the structure of a dum-dum, being a revolver cartridge with hollowed out free end of the bullet, which is right up here. Any shooting enthusiasts know what a hollow point bullet looks like. Illustration number 2 is a photograph of a man's arm through which a dum-dum bullet has passed. The dark marks clearly show the multiple exit caused by the breakup of the bullet. The flesh is roughly lacerated, various pieces of ragged bullet having passed irregularly through. So as you can see, many of the dark spots all over his arm. Let's see here. So illustration number 3 represents a form of dum-dum which is made by the soldier himself. The specimen taken from one who was killed. For the wounded are careful to throw such away at once, if they are able, is an ordinary... I guess that's the end. Anyways, here are various types of mushrooming bullets, usually termed soft nose bullets. So, like it mentioned in the thread, these were absolutely outlawed. The use of these dum-dum bullets were outlawed in warfare. But at the time, we were not at war in Guyana or in Venezuela. So the only people who would actually have access to any of these, unless the soldiers made them themselves, which is unlikely unless they had instruction to do so by, I don't know, maybe the CIA. Oh, come on. There we go. So, of course. And there we go. So, once again, Congressman Leo Ryan, along with the other people killed with him, was killed with untraceable dum-dum bullets, supposedly by a giant man wearing military fatigues who was not from Jonestown. outlawed by the Geneva Convention. The dum-dum bullets, which shatter upon impact, have been issued by the CIA for use in anti-Castro exile raids on Cuba and the JFK assassination. So this is a little hard to see, but this was taken from a video, I believe. So when they say killed by a giant man wearing military fatigues, they are talking about this person in this clip. Let's see. Come on, can I get it one more? Yeah, there we go. It's about as big as I can get it. So the lead assassin, number 2, was 7 feet tall and dressed like a walking rainforest. So I don't know about 7 feet tall. It might just be a weird perspective. But then again, I wasn't there. Wasn't even alive yet. So let's go ahead and remove that. So this is a point that I wanted to bring up. I was unable to fit into the thread. Okay, come on. Okay, so another critic, CIA critic of the era, Mark Lane, had been tricked into representing Jones, who claimed to have been the victim of CIA harassment when all along Jones was working for the CIA. Once again, anyone who's familiar with this story, that was one of the things that Jones kept telling his followers, also any naysayers, that he was actually being targeted by the CIA. And of course, if you're being targeted by the CIA or the FBI, you can't obviously be working for them. Duh. So, Mark Lane visited Jonestown and narrowly escaped the massacre just days before he gave testimony about the JFK assassination at the House Select Committee on Assassinations. Mark Lane had been Marina Oswald's attorney and authored the book Rush to Judgment, which, among other things, contradicted the findings of the Warren Commission that Oswald acted alone. Lane was discredited by his association with Jones and his reputation and career left in ruins in a coup for the CIA. Rather interesting data point that I found incredibly interesting. So let's get back to the thread real quick. And from here on out, we will be switching back and forth. But I do believe it will be worth it. Okay, so after the massacre, a U.S. Customs interim report was found, dated August 26, 1977. It was regarding the investigation into the possible illegal export of up to 170 guns from California to Guyana. Like California, like where Jim Jones was before they moved to Guyana. CIA agent Frank Turpel, a notorious arms dealer and covert operator, admitted to supplying arms and training resources to Jonestown during its early development. His testimony confirmed what many suspected. Jonestown was never just a commune. It was a CIA training ground. So this is Sam, a very well-known CIA smuggler. Like I said, a notorious arms dealer and covert operator. Now, the CIA isn't exactly known for being forthcoming in what they do, which is what makes his story fairly interesting. Now, I do believe a lot of what he says, but once again, he's former CIA, and there is no such thing as former. there is only current or retired. There is no, I was part of the group, I am no longer part of the group. It's like the Marines, but a lot spookier. So, along with this, a search for records following the tragedy has revealed a copy of an interim report prepared by the U.S. Customs Service dated August 26, 1977. This report concerns an investigation carried out by the Customs Service between February and August 1977 with respect to the possible illegal export of up to 170 guns from California to Jonestown, Guyana. The department apparently received no further reports of this investigation. The department officers who briefed Congressman Ryan were not aware of the report. Of course they weren't. The Customs Service had informed us that subsequent investigations resulted in one search of a shipment bound for Guyana, but that had no contraband was discovered. So if this was just one shipment that was found, imagine how many there probably, or imagine how many there most likely were. And I mean, they knew about this, but they never investigated. And then the one time they did investigate, they didn't find any contraband. But of course, remember, Jones is friends with the newly installed CIA-backed puppet president, or puppet prime minister, whatever, in Guyana. So if he wants something smuggled into the country, he can get that done. Not to mention, if they are in connections with Frank Turpel, then he can get them in. He is a notorious arms dealer who ended up coming up on charges of smuggling arms and all sorts of different training devices and torture devices into Angola. Just another connection to Angola. So here's another strange connection. So the official Joint Chiefs of Staff communications log shows a report, the Jonestown suicides at 3:29 a.m. on Sunday, November 18th, on a CIA radio channel, which is NOIWON. In other words, the CIA reported from Jonestown at 3:29 a.m. No one else was supposedly in the area at the time. The only known functioning radio that could have performed this action in the area belonged to Richard Dreyer. So here is the actual picture itself of the report showing. Let's see. Let's do this. Let's pull this up so we can zoom into it, shall we? So right here, it shows 3:29 a.m. Okay? Right here. 3:29 a.m. CIA, and then radio channel, the CIA radio channel, NOIWON, reports mass suicides at Jonestown at 3:29 a.m. And this is from the CIA. Reference 1911J8Z, November 1978. So on top of this, Also highly suspicious was the fact that the CIA notified the Defense Department of mass suicide at Jonestown at 3:29 a.m. when it was still dark outside and hours before the Guyanese Defense Forces arrived at the Jonestown commune. The timing indicates that there was a CIA agent present at Jonestown at the time of the massacre. Otherwise, how can one explain how the CIA would have known about the deaths so quickly, even before the Guyanese Defense Forces arrived? And this is what makes it so spooky. Once again, the only known person in the area to have had a radio was a man by the name of Richard Dreyer. And give me just a sec. I am pulling him up. Let's see. Richard Dreyer. Here we go. Okay, so why did Jones want Dwyer saved? Eerily, in Jones's last tape, transcribed by the FBI, he can be heard amid wailing and screams, exhorting his followers to take their lives, saying, "Get Dwyer out of here before something happens to him." That was Jones on tape saying that. Dwyer was Richard Dreyer, deputy chief of mission at the U.S. Embassy, who is suspected of being a CIA agent. Dwyer worked for the U.S. Foreign Service in Egypt and Syria, and subsequently went to Grenada, where he helped prepare the U.S. invasion of the island nation. He had also worked in Thailand with the U.S. ambassador to Guyana during the Jonestown massacre, John Burke, who was described by CIA whistleblower Philip Agee, I believe, Agee, I don't know, as having worked for the CIA since 1963, when he was an assistant deputy chief of the political section in Saigon. When asked whether he was a CIA agent, Dwyer responded, "I can neither confirm nor deny." Classic CIA answer. The official Joint Chiefs of Staff communication log showed a report of the Jonestown suicide at 3:29 a.m. on Sunday, November 18th, on a CIA radio channel, NOIWON, when the only functioning radio in the area belonged to who else? Dwyer had accompanied Leo Ryan for his 2-day visit to the compound and appears to have been the one to send a mysterious cable at 9:18 p.m. on November 18th, reporting on Ryan and his entourage's death at the port airstrip, information that the State Department did not have until the next morning. In later court proceedings, the Justice Department attorneys kept Dwyer from being questioned, which is all very suspicious. Why would he not be questioned unless he was a spook? Okay. So this is all very spooky, all very interesting connections. Let's see. Now, we have gotten into the CIA mentioning how this was mass suicides. Well, real quick, I guess we should have done this before we got back to the thread. This is something very important, something I couldn't fit into the thread, but we have to talk about it now. Mass killings and not suicides. Pictures of all the dead bodies shown them lying face down as if they had been carefully arranged, with the children lying beneath the adults. Death from cyanide poisoning, however, usually causes violent contortions. Victims often die with only the top of their head and the heels of their feet touching the ground, and could not have been placed in the way that they were. Many victims also had blisters on their back, on the back of their necks, indicating that someone had injected them forcibly from behind. Louis Gervich, who ran the largest detective agency in New Orleans and whose daughter, Jan, died in the massacre, said that he saw guns at the scene of the massacre and evidence of bodies that had been dragged after death and laid out. One man was obviously fighting somebody off and died in that position, while others displayed signs of having been injected with poison. Stanley Clayton, a witness who escaped the massacre, said that he observed a woman being forcefully held down and injected with poison, and that when mothers refused to surrender their children, the armed guards, maybe Green Berets, and nurses just murdered the children. Gervich and Clayton's observations contradicted the media reports from the time, which characterized the deaths at Jonestown as a mass suicide, which you can see here. 400 are found dead in mass suicide by cult, hundreds more missing from Guyana camp. Oh, that's an interesting headline, isn't it? Hundreds missing? Only 400 found dead? I mean, I guess they could be confused about the numbers right away, but that's a lot. I mean, 900 to 400, it's a lot to be confused about there. Also, I mean, it all just seems so strange, doesn't it? Further contradicting the claim of a mass suicide, Mark Lane reported hearing heavy machine gun fire as he fled into the jungle with another Temple attorney, Charles Gary. Autopsies carried out by Guyana's chief medical examiner, Dr. Leslie Mutu, who worked for 32 straight hours in extreme jungle heat, originally determined that the cause of death for at least 700 of the victims at Jonestown was homicide, not suicide. Mutu observed puncture wounds on the back of the shoulders of many of the victims, which indicated that they had been forcibly held down and injected with poison against their will. No needles were found at the scene, except for there were a couple by the cyanide bottle, but I mean, this would have been a lot of needles, not just in that tiny little pitcher, indicating that any needles may have been disposed of. The cyanide poison was found in bottles labeled Valium, which is what many probably thought they were taking. So after Mutu carried out his investigation, the forensic specimens and samples he had gathered were given to a representative of the American Embassy in Georgetown, expecting that they would be forwarded to the American forensic pathologist, but they were not. They disappeared and nobody knows what happened to them. Right afterwards, many of the corpses were embalmed before an autopsy could be performed, obscuring the cause and manner of death. Other bodies were left out to rot and decompose after making an autopsy impossible. This was when the Army had brought in C-131 cargo planes that had the capability of moving hundreds of bodies in a short period. Identification bracelets were removed from the victims, allegedly under the orders of Robert Pastor, the National Security Council's Director of Latin America and Caribbean Affairs. Though Pastor denied giving such an order, Pastor allegedly was working under the orders of Zbigniew Brzezinski, President Jimmy Carter's National Security Council advisor. There's a picture, Robert Pastor, right, and President Jimmy Carter. A study in the New England Journal of Medicine found 6 leading medical examiners describing the handling of the bodies of the victims by the U.S. military and others as inept, incompetent, and embarrassing, with, quote, only circumstantial evidence of probable cyanide poisoning. The Los Angeles Times reported that 3 of the Jonestown dead were discovered in January 1986, 8 years after the mass suicide, stacked in caskets inside of a storage facility in Southern California. Scott Hooker, a Green Beret who landed in Jonestown after the massacre, told Temple defector David Parker Wise that his mission was to kill any remaining survivors and inject their bodies with cyanide. Jones' lover, Annie Moore, was shot and killed in Jones's cabin while retrieving valuables with CIA-issued dum-dum bullets like Ryan. Jeff Braley, a senior medic of the Joint Humanitarian Task Force who was sent to Guyana to recover the remains of the victims of Jonestown, said that he was approached by a man in civilian clothes he suspected to be CIA, who told him to guard a large box of sensitive documents that he needed to take to the U.S. Embassy and to shoot anyone who tried to take the box away. Also highly suspicious was the fact that the CIA notified the Defense Department of the mass suicide at Jonestown at 3:29 a.m. when it was still dark outside and hours before the Guyanese Defense Forces arrived at Jonestown, which we have covered. The timing indicates that there was a CIA present at Jonestown. We're not going to go through all of that again, but isn't that all very interesting? Let's see here. Oh, there's one more little part that kind of connects all of the CIA with all of this. Let's see real quick. Okay. After the massacre, a secret tape was found where muffled voices could be heard in the period before the Guyanese security forces arrived, discussing news coverage about Jonestown in English. These could be the voices of American intelligence agents participating in a cover-up. Air Force Colonel L. Fletcher Powtree, who worked closely in key positions with the CIA and the Joint Chiefs of Staff, JCS, for many years, noted evidence of the involvement of a larger force in the operation. The Joint Chiefs of Staff had prepared air shipments of hundreds of body bags. They didn't normally keep that many in one place. Within hours, they began to shuttle them down to Georgetown, the main city. They couldn't possibly have done that without prior knowledge that this was going to happen. It shows that there were prior planning. Prouty said, "We would provide the agency with the things they were requesting without any questions. That's the way the business works." At Jonestown, he said the JCS provided the body bags, the airlift, and all the rest of the timetable that shows advanced knowledge. The JCS wouldn't have moved at all on their own, he said. They didn't give a damn about Jonestown. These and other unusual events, he noted, quote, are the kinds of earmarks that define the hand of American intelligence. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Oops. It's not what we wanted. We didn't want me. We needed this. Okay. So we'll run through this just real quick because it's part of the thread, but Richard Dwyer, sorry. So give me just a sec. My mouth is getting just a little dry. So Richard Dwyer, deputy chief of the mission at the U.S. Embassy, who is suspected of being a CIA agent. Dwyer had accompanied Leo Ryan on his 2-day visit to the compound. In Jones's last tape, he can be heard, get Dwyer out of here, blah, blah, blah. When asked whether he was a CIA agent, Dwyer responded, "I can neither confirm nor deny." And there's a picture of Dwyer all the way to the right, official from the U.S. Embassy in Guyana, talking with Richard Trop, Marcells Jones, and Jim Jones. Thought that was an interesting picture. So researcher Michael Myers spent 6 years writing his book, Was Jonestown a CIA Medical Experiment?, which concludes that Dr. Layton was directly involved in MKUltra and that Jonestown was as much his, Dr. Layton's, project as it was Jim Jones's. Through Langley Porter, Jones appeared to have been involved with the CIA mind control behavior modification programs that carried out on the legacy of MKUltra. In Brazil, Jones had studied the magical rites of Macumba and Umbanda, and the works of David Miranda, who conducted a study of extrasensory perception. That was also of interest to the CIA in connection with the MKUltra program. So also were the mass conversion techniques at which Jones's Pentecostal training had made him an expert. During the 1960s and 70s, Jones received treatment at the Langley Porter Neuropsychiatric Institute in San Francisco, the nation's leading center for brain research. Langley Porter was known for experiments it conducted on behalf of the Defense Department's Advanced Research Projects Agencies, or ARPA, which is the precursor to DARPA. While much of that research is classified, the Institute experimented with electromagnetic effects and behavioral modification techniques involving a wide variety of stimuli, including hypnosis. All classic MKUltra. Now, the question is, who is Dr. Lawrence Layton? He was a chemical warfare specialist appointed Chief of Chemical and Biological Warfare Research at Dugway Proving Grounds in Utah. He helped develop germ and chemical weapons and overseen many tests. He also worked on the problem of weather and chemical weapons and undertook tests on nerve gas and toxic agents on bombings by chemically armed jet planes, which means he would have been working out of Hill Air Force Base, along with Dugway Proving Grounds out here in Utah. So, meltdown. How dangerous were secret Dugway tests? We're just now starting to realize how dangerous a lot of these tests out here at Dugway were. Just to give the listeners and viewers an idea of Dugway, okay? Dugway is 800,000 square miles big. It is the size of Rhode Island. and it's a military base. So it's the size of a damn state, and it's a massively secret base. There's no way you're getting out there. They have an incinerator, powerful enough to destroy anything, literally anything. They burn nuclear waste out there. They also blow up rocket motors, which is actually kind of cool. But how dangerous were the secret dugway tests? When the wind was blowing at night, the perfect time to test the worst case scenario, the Air Force conducted what amounted to 8 international meltdowns of small nuclear reactors in the Utah desert in 1959. Resulting radiation clouds were tracked by sensors placed up to 20 miles downwind and across a 210 square mile area at the Dugway Proving Ground. According to documents obtained through a Freedom of Information Act request, but the clouds traveled beyond that. When last detected, they were spreading towards US 40, now Interstate 80, the major highway between Utah and Northern California. The communities of Wendover and Knowles may have been in the paths of some clouds. In defending chemical weapon usage, Dr. Layton stated, "You can blow people to bits with bombs. You can shoot them with shells. You can atomize them with atomic bombs. That's considered moral. But the same people think there's something terrible about poisoning the air and letting people breathe it. Anything having to do with gas warfare, chemical warfare, has the taint of horror on it. Even if you only make people vomit, it's all right to kill somebody in war, but it's not all right to make him vomit or make him silly. Actually, it's one of the most humane forms of warfare. If you want to compare it to other types, I'm not apologizing for chemical warfare. I'm just saying that the prejudices against chemical warfare in favor of conventional and atomic weapons is absurd." Which, I mean, I don't really disagree. I'm with him. I'm not about to start apologizing for chemical warfare, but comparatively speaking, it could, in theory, be a more humane way. How about we just don't commit war, though? That'd be great, wouldn't it? So Jonestown provided ideal isolation for medical experiments. The medical staff under Dr. Lawrence Schatt, I believe, known for painful suturing without anesthetics, administered drugs, and kept daily records, which all disappeared after the massacre. Maybe that important box of documents that somebody was told to shoot anyone trying to take it. The medical staff numbered 70. Most were psychiatrists, psychologists, behavioral scientists, therapists, and pharmacologists. Why would you need that for Jonestown? That seems incredibly strange. Now here's where it gets even more strange. When the Jonestown Medical Clinic was found after the massacre, mind you, staffed with 70 people for 900 people, this was a state-of-the-art facility. When the Jonestown Medical Clinic was found after the massacre, they found enough drugs to supply the average U.S. city for more than a year. Let me say that again. They found enough drugs to supply the average U.S. city for more than a year. What's strange is what they held in stock. Largely, it was hypnotic drugs used for mind control. Thorazine, 10,000 injectable doses and 1,000 tablets. So that's 11,000 doses of Thorazine in a size normally given only for severe neuropsychiatric conditions. Excuse me. The drug acts at all levels of the central nervous system. Quaaludes, a sedative hypnotic drug frequently used in suicide attempts. Vistril, used for total management of anxiety, tension, and psychomotor agitation, can render the disturbed patient more amenable to psychotherapy and long-term treatment of neurotics and psychotics. Noladar, a sleeping aid that produces both psychological psychosociological and psychological dependence. Moderate overdoses can produce delirium and confusion. Large overdoses, stupor, leading to coma. Let's see here. There was also injectable Valium, useful in treating neurotic states manifested by tension, anxiety, apprehension, fatigue, depressive symptoms, and agitation. Valium tablets. An overdose of Valium in either form tends to make suicidal patients more likely to make a death attempt. Morphine sulfate. This strong painkiller can be habit-forming and have complex psychological effects. Demerol, a narcotic angelic. I don't know. I'm only an armchair doctor, okay, people? I also suck at pronunciation. It should be used with great caution and has multiple reactions similar to those of morphine. Telwin, similar to Demerol in morphine-like actions. The drug has a history of creating psychological and physical dependence. Seconal, an extremely dangerous sedative and hypnotic that can be habit-forming, must be used under medical supervision. Oops. Now, there were also, let's see here. So, give me just one sec. Oh, yeah. So, what is linked in the post itself is actually a official report of them finding all of this. And there were some records that were shown, or that were recovered, some of the medical records. And so if you want to go check out the official records, that is what was found. Not making all of that up, but it is incredibly odd that it was nothing but it was nothing but mind control drugs. And I mean, 11,000 doses of Thorazine? Come on. Let's see here. Let's keep it moving. We're getting pretty close to 2 hours here. And so now you've also got to think about the types of punishments that these people were given and the things that they were experiencing while they were in Jonestown. This is very reminiscent of MKUltra style tactics. Not even just style tactics. It was MKUltra tactics. So some of the things that the people would experience while down there was psychic driving. Jim Jones employed techniques akin to psychic driving by subjecting his followers to continuous repetitive messages, Speakers broadcasted his sermons and directives throughout Jonestown, reinforcing his ideology and expectations, thereby manipulating the residents' thoughts and behaviors. Sleep deprivation. Residents of Jonestown were subjected to extensive sleep deprivation. They were required to perform manual labor from early morning until evening, followed by lengthy evening gatherings where Jones delivered sermons that lasted for several hours, leaving the community sleep deprived. Mind you, he was higher than a kite when he was doing this, because he was into barbiturates and methamphetamine at this point. Well, not at this point. He was always into it, which is why he wore the sunglasses. But by this point, his drug abuse was getting out of control. Physical exhaustion. The demanding daily routines in Jonestown led to significant physical exhaustion among its members. Most were required to perform manual labor from early morning until evening, contributing to a state of chronic fatigue that paired with critical thinking and resistance. Come on, there it is. Emotional trauma. Jones orchestrated events known as White Nights, and he started doing this when he was in San Francisco, during which he simulated attacks on the commune and conducted rehearsals for mass suicide. These drills induced severe emotional trauma, keeping the community in a constant state of fear and readiness to die for their leader. Isolation. Jones fostered a sense of isolation by warning his followers that any attempts to leave Jonestown or suggestions to do so might be loyalty tests designed by him. The tactic isolated individuals from external influences and reinforced dependence on the commune. Granted, these are all manipulation tactics, but they are all classic MKUltra mind control tactics. Dr. Layton was father to two key members of the People's Temple, Deborah and Larry Layton. Deborah managed the finances of the People's Temple. Larry became one of Jim Jones's top lieutenants. Larry Layton's letters about his dad read, "Dr. Layton treated me cruelly, threatened to put me in a mental institution. My dad used to try to hypnotize me. They had all kinds of tests out there that were killing sheep. Dad once told me he could have been tried as a war criminal." These are all things that Larry Layton had said about his dad. Mind you, this is the person that worked at Dugway Proving Ground that was, for lack of a better term, justifying chemical warfare, who was not going to apologize for it. Larry said in one of his letters, his work here, meaning Utah, was all top secret. Although I was young, I do have memories of seeing bomb tests that my dad was involved in, as I laid out on the desert watching. Dr. Layton's job was to develop ways to kill people. At this U.S. Army proving grounds, they had all kinds of tests out there that killed sheep and other animals. When I was in Berkeley later on in years, my dad once told me he could be tried as a war criminal for some of the things he had done. He was very cruel to animals. He hates animals. He has wire around his yard in Berkeley to shock animals if they come around his yard. He wanted to borrow a pellet gun to be able to shoot raccoons if they came around his yard. He once gave a cute little animal an injection which caused it to die of anaphylactic shock. So this man is not a good person by any means. A conscientious objector to the Vietnam War and medical technician at Mendocino State Hospital, Larry Layton, Dr. Layton's son, became involved in Jonestown after participation in the drug culture and protest movement at Berkeley, California. MKUltra. Larry ended up leading the death squad that killed Congressman Leo Ryan and 4 other persons. To the mid and late 1960s, when Berkeley became the scene of frequent tumultuous anti-war demonstrations and other protests, Larry and Deborah Layton joined many of the demonstrations and began experimenting with drugs. Larry, after graduating from Berkeley High School, enrolled at the University of California at Davis, and soon was living with Carolyn Moore, a student whose father was a Protestant minister that's covered up actually. They were married in 1966, and a year later, Larry, who was a Quaker, had obtained a draft deferment as a conscientious objector, moved with his new wife to Ukiah in Northern California to serve in lieu of military duty as a medical technician at the Mendocino State Hospital. The hospital was not far from the People's Temple community Mr. Jones had established in Redwood Valley. Of course, that's a picture of him being arrested on the airstrip the day he killed Congressman Leo Ryan. Deborah Layton managed the temple's money, laundering to Swiss and offshore bank accounts. Deborah also appropriated the money to purchase the drugs found and the arms for her husband's project. Deborah was married to British-born temple member Philip Blakey. Told you that name was going to come back up. George Philip Blakey, in charge of the Shalom Project, running Jonestown, before it was Jonestown. George Philip Blakey made the initial $650,000 deposit for the purchase of the land that became Jonestown. According to Research Michael Myers, Blakey ran a special forces training camp for mercenaries headed to Angola. Blakey, one of Jones's top lieutenants, managed the whole program like a business. And if you just look at this picture, I mean, what the hell is going on? You've got like this little shirtless black boy driving a boat, and Philip there just, I don't know. I don't know what the hell's going on, and I don't think I want to. Recruits were trained in jungle warfare and deployed to conflict zones, bypassing congressional oversight. Classic Gladio workaround. Under his command, there were 100 to 200 mercenaries, or maybe even 500. Some were on the People's Temple's security staff. The camp's infrastructure, sophisticated weapons, explosives, and 2 distinct sites, a primitive jungle outpost and main cleared camp, mirrors Gladio's isolated training model. Here's a map of everything of Jonestown, how everything was laid out. It's very typical of military training camps. Colonel L. Fletcher Powtry, a CIA liaison to the Joint Chiefs, revealed pre-positioned body bags. Let's see, we already read that. Let's see, yeah, already read that. So Jonestown was no isolated tragedy. It was a meticulously planned extension of Operation Gladio, as Colonel Towner, a veritable expert on Operation Gladio, asserts. There was unequivocally an Operation Gladio operation going on at Jonestown in Guyana, says the good colonel. In the 1980s, a suit was filed against the CIA by surviving victims of Jim Jones. In it, they alleged that Jim Jones was a CIA agent and had been one since 1963, before he went to Brazil. 20 months after Leo Ryan's murder, his 5 remaining children filed a lawsuit also against the CIA. It was mysteriously dismissed. Reverend Jim Jones was CIA agent, suit alleges. survivors of the People's Temple tragedy and relatives of the dead followers of the Reverend Jim Jones sued the federal government Wednesday, claiming it conspired in the deaths of more than 900 cult members. The suit for personal injury and violation of civil rights charges that former Secretary of State Cyrus Vance and former CIA Director Stanfield Turner participated in a conspiracy with Jones to control temple members who held socialist beliefs. More than 20 months after Leo Ryan was killed, his 5 adult children, 2 sons and 3 daughters, filed a lawsuit based on an extensive investigation into what had participated their father's death, filed in the United States District Court for the Northern District of California on July 31st, 1980. The suit asked for general damages of $3 million plus costs for Congressman Ryan's funeral and bringing the action. The lawsuit claimed that the Jonestown colony was infiltrated with agents of the Central Intelligence Agency of the United States. The name of one of the agents was Philip Blakey, a trusted aide in People's Temple leader James Warren Jones. That said, agents were working with the Department of State and the Central Intelligence Agency to use Jonestown Colony as a part of the CIA's MKULTRA program. That massive quantities of mind-controlled drugs were found at the Jonestown Colony after the fatal incident of November 18th, 1978. Now, what's interesting is the 1980 lawsuit by the surviving victims of the cult of Jim Jones. It was dismissed because the court determined that it had been too long. That was the only reason it was dismissed. The court said that they did not have any more authority to be able to sue at that point. Let's see here. So 20 months. And then the Congressman Leo Ryan lawsuit from his kids. Like it said, it was mysteriously dismissed. No reason that I've been able to find for why that it was actually ever dismissed. And that means that we come to the end of the thread. Hopefully now it can be seen that Jonestown is a clear continuation of MKUltra, Operation Gladio, Operation Condor, and Operation Phoenix. Paramilitary action, drug and gun running, state terrorism, and mind control. And that's it, people. That is the end of the Jonestown thread. And this has been your bonus episode for today. Before we get out of here, I would like to let everyone know to head on over to Nadu Shave Company. Nadu has had a opportunity to sponsor this show for a long time. They have the balls to sponsor this show. And I absolutely love their products. I definitely don't make, as much for that company as, some of the other sponsors do. But go check these people out anyways. I absolutely recommend their products. I mean, it's great. It's great. It's absolutely great. I will never stop promoting them because I like their products just that much. Let's hear. So make sure and go to NADEAUSHAVECO.com. Use promo code RISE15, RISE15, and get 15% off at checkout. Let them know who sent you. And I think we're going to get out of here. We've reached 2 hours. The live show over on Podbean ends right at 2 hours. And it's been a long one. There's a lot of information to digest there. You might have to go back and rewatch it. But make sure and go check the thread out. There's a lot more information that I couldn't include in on this, even though I included some more information not in the thread. There's just so much. And I am to the point where after reading all of these bits of information, researching it, there was absolutely no way in my mind that I see that Jonestown was just a religious cult fanatic that resulted in mass suicide. It was clearly a CIA operation, and it was very clearly a continuation of MKUltra. Now, other than that, thank you all so much for tuning in. I deeply appreciate it. So with that, make sure and hit the like button, hit the follow, hit the share. Please leave a comment. All of these things actually help the channel. The more, the more attention I can get on this, the better content I can actually bring everyone. Although I will always try to bring my best, my top that I possibly can, regardless of the attention. But we need to be able to get this out there, and the big tech overlords had made sure that I'm not going to grow. So I am entirely dependent upon all of you. So once again, hit the like, follow, subscribe, comment, share, all of those things. And other than that, we will have another live stream coming Thursday. We will be getting back into the normal false memory syndrome thread, so be on the lookout for that. And other than that, I can't think of anything else. Get at me on X, Telegram, or Instagram. And until next time, stay free, my friends.